Okay, so in the last video, we talked about how fat loss actually works, what brings about fat loss, and how it's about calories in versus calories out, and the things that we're going to do to create that calorie deficit. Okay, so lots of keywords in that first video. But in this video, I want to go into it in a little bit more depth and talk about some of the common arguments that you're going to come up against. Because everyone's an expert, right? Everyone knows everything about weight loss and fitness. And you'll get people who've been overweight their whole life and still can't lose weight telling you that the way you're doing it is all wrong. This is the nature of my work. I get told by hairdressers and bankers and lawyers and bin men about how I know absolutely nothing and actually I've got it all wrong, even though they don't manage to do it successfully over long periods of time. So one of the arguments that you're going to come up against is CICO, calories in versus calories out, is oversimplified. And the examples that they give are things like 100 calories of chicken and 100 calories of chocolate don't have the same nutritional value or aren't the same when we put them in our bodies. Or they say things like muscle burns more energy than fat or more calories than fat, and celery burns more energy than it contains. All of these arguments are the most outrageous logical fallacies. They sound kind of legit when someone throws it at you at the dinner table, but they really just expose how little the person saying them understands calories in versus calories out. And I want to explain that to you in this video in case you're feeling like you've had one of these conversations and you think maybe that person's right, or just to help you understand it, but also give you some arguments and some ammo if you do need to defend what you're doing. Okay, so all foods have energy. Carbs have 4 calories per gram. Protein has 4 calories per gram. Fat has 9 calories per gram, so more than twice as much as carbs and protein. And alcohol, which is a 4th macronutrient, has 7 calories per gram, although we're not going to talk about that in this video. A calorie, as I mentioned in the last video, is a unit of measurement. It's the amount of energy that it takes to heat up 1 centimeter cubed of water by 1 degree Celsius in very, very specific conditions. It's very, very boring. But it is nonetheless a unit of measurement, just the same as a centimeter is always the same and a gram is always the same. It doesn't necessarily account for other properties of whatever weighs a gram or is a centimeter long, but it's still exactly the same, no matter where it comes from, whether it comes from chocolate or chicken. So, just to use that example, 100 grams of chicken has 239 calories, whereas 100 grams of chocolate has 546 calories, almost twice as much, right? So more than twice as much, actually. So how can this be? So it's clearly not the same thing. Let's switch that round. 100 calories of chicken versus 100 calories of chocolate. Okay, it's clearly not going to be exactly the same, is it? So 100 calories of chicken is going to give you about 40 grams of chicken. It's got a lot of protein in it. It's got some fat in it, almost no carbs. It's very filling. 40 grams of chicken probably isn't that filling, but it's very filling for what it is and for the volume. And it's hard to digest, so it increases the thermic effect of food. Whereas 100 calories of chocolate is only going to give you 17 grams, so less than half. It's got a lot of fat in it. It's got a lot of sugar in it, which are carbohydrates. It's not very filling at all. It's very easy to digest, so has very low thermic effect of food, and it's absolutely delicious. So they're very, very, very different. And saying, it's kind of like the question, what weighs more, a pound of feathers or a pound of stones? It weighs exactly the same. They both weigh a pound, but they're clearly very, very different. They clearly both have properties that are very, very different from each other. Feathers look very different. A pound of feathers is like this big. It has a lot more volume, and a pound of stone might only be this big. Okay, so they have other properties that are different, but they still both weigh a pound. So that is exactly the same as calories in chicken and chocolate. They both have the same number of calories, but the other things that we can measure and describe about it and observe of those two different things are different. It's not complicated. But if we compare that to 100 calories of celery, that's going to give you 700 calories, 700 grams of celery. It's going to give you a load of fiber, a lot of water, very little else. There's some vitamins and minerals in it. There's some vitamins and minerals in the chicken as well. It's very hard to digest. There's a lot of cellulose in there. Our bodies can't actually break it down, and we poo it out, and it binds to other stuff in our gut. And it's got very little substance in it, and it will mess with your digestion. If you eat nearly a kilogram of celery, you're going to be on the toilet for a few days. So clearly 100 calories of celery is very, very different from those other two things that we just mentioned. So all of these things, all of these different properties of food, when someone says calories in versus calories out, calories in, CICO, it's not that they don't know these things. It's not that they're saying all foods are identical. You can just eat chocolate all day and lose weight. You can basically lose chocolate all day and eat chocolate all day and lose weight, but you're going to be hungry. You're going to feel like shit. And over time, you're going to be very unhealthy. What people aren't saying, when people say calories in versus calories out, they're not saying these other things don't matter. Of course they do. Food quality matters, health matters, fiber matters, like the macronutrients of the foods matter. It's just that the calories in versus calories out is ultimately what is going to dictate fat loss. All of those other things also matter. It's not saying they don't matter. It's just saying that they're not the most important thing that is going to cause, that is going to elicit fat loss. Then there's also other things that affect how much and what you eat. Okay, we're complicated. So getting enough sleep is essential. If you're not sleeping enough, it's going to mess with your satiety and hunger hormones, and you're going to crave more sugar. You're going to crave eating more. If you're more stressed, some people will overeat when they're stressed. Some people will undereat when they're stressed. We have individual differences as well. A very hard workout, like some people, if they smash themselves to pieces in a CrossFit workout, it's going to increase their hunger afterwards. But if you do a moderate workout, like if you go for a walk or a jog, or lift sensible weights for half an hour or an hour, it's actually going to reduce your hunger. Fasting, not eating for 24 hours, it's going to make you starving. Habits, or maybe not even 24 hours, just for half the day, is going to make you very, very hungry. Habits that you've built up over a lifetime, this affects how much and what you eat. Social pressure, norms, eating out with people, eating dinner with people, it changes how we eat. The composition of foods, okay, so what's actually in those foods, the different macronutrients, whether it has more sugar, whether it's more calorie dense, whether it has more fiber, these are all going to affect how much and what we eat. It's much easier to overeat calorie dense foods, and it's much harder to overeat whole foods. All these things matter. Nobody's saying that they don't matter. It's just that ultimately they affect either calories in or calories out in some way, directly or indirectly. Things that affect how many calories you burn. Your age, okay, after the age of 30, we lose about 5% muscle mass every decade, 5% of our muscle mass every single decade after the age of 30. So our metabolic rate decreases, and we burn fewer calories at rest, which is why it's so important to be doing some kind of resistance training at least twice a week throughout the lifespan, to maintain that metabolic rate and to prevent injury and falls and all this other stuff in old age, osteoporosis. That's not to do with fat loss exactly, that's health, but that still matters. Your sex, whether you're male or female, men have more muscle mass than women. They have denser bones. They have higher metabolic rates than women. Is that unfair? It is, but that's life. Muscle mass, I mentioned that before with age, but if you have more muscle mass, you're going to burn more calories at rest and in your activities. So we want to increase muscle mass through resistance training. The types of food you eat also affect how many calories you burn, because celery and chicken burns more calories in digestion than chocolate does. Okay, so it's not that people don't know that is a fact. It's just that that directly impacts the calories out. So it still fits into the calories in, calories out equation. the amount of exercise and movement you're doing, your genetics. Some people have a higher metabolic rate than others. Also not fair, but that's just the way it is. Healing from injury is going to increase your metabolic rate. Pregnancy and lactation is also going to increase your metabolic rate. These things are very, very expensive for us. So all of these things increase the number of calories that you burn. So this is why we focus on calorie counting in the beginning, because it helps us to control and understand the things that we can control and the things that we can't control. There are other things that absolutely matter and help. Okay, so food quality helps, getting vitamins, minerals, fiber, micronutrients. It all helps. It helps you feel more full. It helps you increase the thermic effect of food, not by very much, by very, very little, but it still helps. But it's also important just for your health, like regardless of fat loss. If you improve your food quality without losing weight, you're going to get healthier. But by the same token, if you lose weight without changing the actual foods that you eat, you're also going to get healthier. Getting structured meal times improves our circadian rhythm. It helps even out blood sugar levels. It helps us, our bodies, get used to getting full, getting empty, rather than fasting and feeding and feasting, which a lot of people are in a cycle of doing. Increasing exercise also helps us get it with this calorie in, calorie out equation. And there are different types of exercise we want to do. So the strength training, but also the higher intensity cardiovascular exercise, the lower intensity cardiovascular exercise, and then things like mobility and core, which might not burn many calories, but they're important for other reasons. And we need higher and lower intensity exercise. Muscle mass. Increasing muscle mass, gaining and preserving muscle mass over time. If we don't do resistance training, we tend to lose if you lose weight, about a third of that will come from non-fat tissue, so from lean body mass. And we want to prevent that by maintaining muscle mass while we lose weight. So we do strength training for that reason. Sleep and stress, we want to be managing that. Activity levels, getting you moving more. It could be just, putting a watch on and spending 30 minutes cleaning your house. That's also going to help you burn calories. And addressing things like macronutrient ratios, it can be important for some people. It's less important than people think, but it does matter. Okay. And then on top of all of that, you're a complicated, messy human. And these things are things that we need to navigate in order to help you lose weight. Or that may be getting in the way of you losing weight. So emotional eating or disordered eating, if you've got any of that stuff going on, we absolutely need to address that. We need to navigate it. And it's not just a case of stop doing it, right? That's not helpful. We've got to figure out why it's happening and help you navigate that. Okay. And it's much, much, much more complicated than just saying, just eat less and move more. Holidays and events, like the high holidays and, birthdays and things like that. We've got to figure out how to navigate that. Eating out in restaurants and not knowing what's in the food. Family meals, where there's a lot more pressure. You're eating with other people. You've got different habits. There's foods that you enjoy. Peer pressure. Maybe some of you have people who aren't so supportive in your life. Maybe just eating around other people just throws you off. And then there's mood and mental health. This is a really, really big one. If you suffer from depression or anxiety, we're going to have to manage that or navigate it. We're going to have to take it into account. Or just when you have a bad day and you're used to just having chocolate and wine on the sofa to relax. These are all things that we need to navigate. But it doesn't change the simple fact that at the end of the day, it's calories in versus calories out that matters. That doesn't mean that there aren't other factors that matter and that contribute towards it. And it doesn't mean that there aren't other really messy things going on in our lives that also impact this. And there's lots of other things for us to navigate. Okay, so big message, big takeaway here is it's still about calories in, calories out, no matter what anyone says. That doesn't mean that people who are saying that, like me, don't have an appreciation about how much else is going on and how much contributes towards it. But we've got to find a way to manipulate those two things at the end of the day.